What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday night football. Let's buckle up because we got a lot going on in the NFL. Want to start with, of course, the Jets, a team that's 2-4 and gets talked about nonstop because it's been one of the craziest 10-day stretches in the league. Sean Payton goes back to New Orleans, and we got a lot of players missing in this game. But I was reading some of his quotes when he resigned, aka quit on the Saints, and just have a couple quick thoughts there. The Browns quarterback situation. I was reading this Mike Sando article about getting rid of like their first round pick or maybe multiple picks to try to unload that contract to a team. And then obviously that team would just immediately cut him. They would just basically not help the Browns out, but buy first round picks. Some thoughts there and a couple other things going on around the league. I want to react really quick to Jerry Jones and his comments on the Dallas radio show about getting guys fired, that he pays their salaries or something. Actually been there. I was once removed from a radio job because of an NFL team that wanted me out so they could put an employee. So I think I have a unique perspective on that situation. Kind of made me chuckle, but yeah, let's buckle up. Obviously, before we dive into football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. If you want to go to a game, any game, I just had a buddy, my buddy Vincent Recruity. He is a Fresno guy. He's buddies with Aaron Judge. He was just at the Yankee game 2. He sent me a text today. You got to go to a playoff game at the Bronx. And I was thinking watching them play last night, like, I think the Yankees might win the World Series. Because it feels like for the last decade, their bats go cold, and right now their bats look good. And if that team can hit in the cold, obviously if they play the Mets or if they go to LA, if you want to go to one of these games and you live in one of these areas, if you're a fan of one of these teams, obviously football, college football, concerts, comedy shows, doesn't get any easier to search for tickets, price points, the views. It is really, really easy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I really think the Jets, once they lost to the Bills, I think their season is teetering in just got disaster written all over it. Obviously, Devontae was over the Raiders. Their quarterback situation was an embarrassment. Vic Tafur, who writes for The Athletic, basically wrote today that Gardner Minshew he couldn't take seriously. He quit on the Raiders. Which, listen, I don't necessarily blame him. The team sucks so bad, but the reason he's there is because he wanted to go there. And when you look at the last 10 days of the Jets, it's pretty nuts. And well-run teams that know what they're doing, teams that have won, I think it would be very, very difficult for them to overcome this. But teams that have had a 14, 15-year playoff drought, a team that hasn't sniffed the playoffs in a long, long time. I mean, the last time they were even close to making the playoffs was Todd Bowles when they went 10-6 and they missed it. For the most part, this team has sucked. And now they're going to go in the 10-day stretch. They fired Saleh. Next day, Ulbrich demotes Downing. Then a couple days later, they lose to the Bills. That night, they're trading for Devontae as they are granting Hassan Reddick the opportunity to seek a trade with his new agent, Drew Rosenhaus. But because of stipulations of the trade, they are not allowed to trade him to the NFC, or it will cost them a 2026 second-round pick. So they basically have to trade him to the AFC. And Mike Williams now wants a trade, right? They just turned on him. Aaron Rodgers talked a bunch of shit. He's out. Like, this is a joke. And I go back to the beginning of the season. These people that pick the Jets to win the division, Had to be one. Listen, I have some laughable takes too. I had the Saints to make the playoffs. It's not looking great. But the Jets thing, like to pick them over the Bills, I just never understood it. And now I saw someone say this on social media that trading for Devontae is a way for Woody Johnson because he desperately doesn't want to look like an idiot. Because basically everyone's calling him like, wait, you just fired Robert Saleh, and the defense immediately looked worse. And your head coach now, who's also your defensive coordinator, looks a little overwhelmed. And it's like the one bright spot was, okay, Downing is now calling the offense. Well, it's been well reported that Saleh was ready to do that on Monday, but he was fired before he could pull the trigger. And even Nathaniel Hackett knew it was coming. And now you add Devontae, who, like, I just think this situation jumped the shark over the course of the last 10 days. And I don't think you can overcome it. And I've been saying this for a while, is these guys had it pretty good in Green Bay, and they have learned a lesson. This is what a lot of players all over the league deal with. Like, this is the ultimate shit show. And Tomlin immediately screws with them. Like, I would imagine if I was a betting man, I think Justin Fields is going to start. I think it's easy to throw out that Russell Wilson might start to throw off the defensive coordinator, who is also now the interim head coach. And it just keeps everything in disarray. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, this isn't like, the Roethlisberger 2010 team. So they are beatable. But if you think this Jets team is just going to go on the road, and the point spread moved 3 points because they traded for Devontae Adams. That's basically, I'm sure we'll talk about it with Stuckey on Friday, unheard of. The point spread never moves unless it's a quarterback. The Devontae Adams, who hasn't even played the last couple weeks, listen, I'm not going to say he's faking an injury, but he was injured and then he gets traded and he's immediately healthy and now he's practicing and playing. And I'll never argue with anyone who wants out of the Raiders because you're just guaranteed to lose there. But going to the Jets, let's face it, is like a sexier version. The results aren't that much different. So if the Jets are able to turn this season around, I would immediately give Jeff Ulbrich a contract extension. And I plan on every good team they play this week and a couple weeks against the Texans, betting the house against them. The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. At DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Running it from the one or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The Saints in Denver. On the surface, this game has a boatload of injuries. I just saw Surtain. He's out. The Saints are missing a ton of guys. Olave's out. Shaheed's out. They're already missing Ruiz. A ton of guys are injured. Denver is favored on the road. But I did find it funny looking at some of these Sean Payton quotes from a couple years ago. Is he basically just shorted the franchise? He just quit on him. And I read his quotes on the day that he gave the press conference. Sometimes you're like, hey, I can't coach right now. I need to take a deep breath. I need to go away for a while. Coaching is not even on my mind. I just want to go play golf, hang out with my family. I just need a reset. He was basically like, yeah, I plan on coaching again. Just do a little TV. I hate the word retirement. He said that. He's like, I used to talk about Tom Benson, who had passed away by then, had always told him like how overrated retirement is. And I agree with that. Like, unless you're fucking Tiger Woods, you ain't playing golf every day. Like, retirement is something that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Sounds very boring. You need some purpose and things to do in life. And Sean Payton was like, yeah, I plan on coming back to coach. He saw the writing on the wall. They had no quarterback. They were in cap hell. And he just punted on their franchise. and said, I'm out. I saw a headline to a couple people that I follow on Twitter that write for some of the local newspapers. I can't read the articles because they're behind a paywall, but basically saying like there are still a lot of people within the Saints that aren't really happy how it ended. Don't blame them. It's like, I'm out. Here's Dennis Allen. Good luck. Godspeed. double middle fingers. Couple years later, he gets 90 million. He gets to handpick his quarterback, living in Denver, living good. I mean, it's his mentor was Bill Parcells. It was very Bill Parcells. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want. And I don't give a shit in the wake of my decision who it impacts. Now, you could argue for Dennis Allen, who was defensive coordinator. Pretty incredible. Got him a huge raise. Let him be a head coach again. Obviously, it hasn't gone well. But you don't see that very often. A guy just basically looking at his roster, knowing he's screwed for the next couple years because they're not bad enough to ever draft high. I'm sure he regretted the Mahomes thing from a couple years previously and just say, I'm out. See you guys. It's like, what, are you just quitting coaching? No, I'll be back probably in, 9 months. It won't be that long. You'll see me on TV for a little bit as I'm taking calls, and I'll be in my office probably January 1st with a franchise. And that's exactly what happened. And the Saints, who, listen, we can nitpick Sean Payton where he falls on the hierarchy, but he's much higher than anything the Saints are going to get, especially compared to Dennis Allen. And he just left him high and dry, and now he's coaching somewhere else. So if I was a Saints fan, I think most places, if it happened in college football down there, like if Brian Kelly just quit, and then all of a sudden the next 2 years later, he's at Florida, kicking ass, you'd be like, what's going on? Can you imagine? You can't really use Sirianni and McCarthy, but the coach is having success of the Cowboys, of the Eagles, of the Bears, just doing this. I think it would be a much bigger story. It is kind of nuts that he just pulled this off pretty seamlessly. I know this. If Kyle Shanahan in a couple years is like, don't really love this Brock Purdy contract. Our team's not that good. I'm just going to kick it. Like, oh, you're just done coaching? I plan on being back. Like, coaching is in my future. I'll be somewhere in a couple years. Now, they got a first-round pick for him. They had to trade for him. But still, that sucks. You would rather have Sean Payton than the draft pick. Mike Sando wrote this kind of in-depth, as he does like every Monday, article about this Deshaun Watson. I mean, he hit on a lot of stuff, but one of the things he hit on was the Deshaun Watson situation. And he's guaranteed $46 million next year. He's guaranteed $46 million the year after that. Their cap implications are obviously not ideal. If they cut him now, it would accelerate and they'd have like $170 million of dead cap space. They can do post, June 1 and all this stuff. But one thing that has been floated is some of these teams, let's just use the Patriots, teams that have a lot of cap space, could you include draft picks, which you're not technically supposed to do, but I don't think the league is going to make a big stink. Could you include a couple first-round picks with Deshaun Watson to a team with a bunch of cap space? And my first reaction when I read this, and I've heard some people talk about it, like, one, why would you want to ruin your cap, especially if you have a rookie quarterback? The most powerful thing of the rookie quarterback, beside him being a good player on the field, is he doesn't make that much money. So it allows you to build your team. And then I started thinking, like, I'm not the biggest free agency guy because most players that hit free agency aren't exactly difference makers. Doesn't mean you can't get starters, and a team like the Patriots would gladly buy a guard here, a center here, a tackle there. But you're not exactly getting, Jim Otto and Jonathan Ogden in free agency. That's not the way it works. So if you could, now, if I'm the Browns, one, it looks like they're headed toward a couple wins, right? So if they stay on this trajectory, their first-round draft picks got potential to be like third. You could argue like the third overall pick in this draft, which clearly has some high-end guys, would you just do that straight up? It's like, well, what if you could, because you're the Patriots, you're going to suck too. What if you have like the second and third pick and you can trade back with one of those picks because you already have a quarterback to someone trading up, and the other pick you get like Travis Hunter. So you can come out of this draft with like Travis Hunter, your starting tackle, and a bunch of other picks in future years. Is it worth it to you to take, $100 million hit for a year? And when I've been thinking about this, like, no, I would rather just have the flexibility. I would entertain it depending on where their picks are. Now, if you're the Browns, your only hope to pivot, because even if you do clear the books, if you get rid of the picks, because that's the only way you could ever unload him to another team is attach the asset, which is so obviously would take a lot. I mean, it would take more than the number one overall pick. It might take like a first this year and 2 seconds. But don't you need those picks? Wouldn't you just say, fuck it? This guy is dead weight. It's already water under the bridge. The contract's the contract. Don't we want to use that pick on potentially a quarterback? Like, that's really our only way out. So it's basically only if the owner wants to get out of paying the cash. And that's, I think, the crappy part about this entire Brown situation is it feels like it's just under the control of Jimmy Haslam, who, a lot like Woody Johnson, has a track record of just being a loon. And the coach and the GM, couple Ivy League guys, feel like they have no control out of this. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know about Andrew Berry's influence on this, but I can't imagine that they are pounding the table right now for Deshaun Watson. And like I said, it's no longer a story every single week when Stefanski says Deshaun Watson's going to be our starting quarterback. Like, we get it. We know. This Jerry Jones story that, Jerry's a one of a kind. He's the only owner in the NFL who, after the Cowboys win or lose, the number one person to talk to is not the quarterback, is not the coach, is not one of the star position players. It's the owner. He's the only guy who every single week gives a press conference essentially in the locker room. That's unprecedented. Then 2 days later on Tuesday morning, he goes on, I think it's 105.3, I think it's The Fan in Dallas, and he gives a weekly interview. For most of you that live in your markets, whoever has your football team, right? Whoever has the Bears, whoever have the Eagles, whoever has, in San Francisco, it's KNBR has the Niners. You get the head coach and the GM on a weekly basis. And then with these deals, 105.3 has the Cowboys, you get access to their players. It's part of the contract. But Jerry's getting grilled by these guys, and he freaks. And he's pissed off, and he essentially says, I pay your salary. Which is kind of funny to me because actually the way the business works is the radio station pays the Cowboys for the rights to do their games. And honestly, in radio, and when I was in radio, we had the Raiders, and I did some stuff at KNBR, who had the Niners, that the games actually aren't that valuable, the actual game, because they're all on Sundays. Well, you get paid, or you bill people advertising-wise, basically 6 a.m. to, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. So the actual property of the games, unlike baseball or basketball that is played during the work week, it's not as powerful that way. Where it is, though, is it gives you access to Jerry, to Mike McCarthy, to Dak, to the players. And that is really valuable. Now, I think the hard part about this is I see both sides. That I give credit to these two radio hosts for going at Jerry. Because when you are in business with these teams, even though you're paying them, you need them. And Jerry knows it. Even if Jerry's just saying this because he's used to saying, I pay you. Well, not actually, Jerry, they pay you, but you do have the leverage here. Now, I don't know how long the contract is, but they need the Cowboys' property. Of course they do. Just like in all these markets, whoever has the Dodgers, whoever has the Yankees, whoever has the Giants, like, it's very, very valuable to the radio station. But I, once upon a time, used to work for a station with an NFL team. And I used to be given free reign. Say whatever you want. Do not hesitate. As long as you don't make it personal, let it rip. And I would really piss off the Raiders. And they would get really, really mad about things I would say. And this was during a time when they were moving. And they would make threats a lot of the time. But my boss at the time said, as long as you're not making fun of like Mark's haircut, like if you're just talking about how shitty they were and they were a team that was barely winning like 4 or 5 games and they were moving. So, or trying to move at the time. And I used to make fun of them a lot for that. But I learned a valuable lesson. When you are in business with these people and the company wants to stay in business, those people can get rid of you. And Mark Davis, and mainly Mark Bedane, his president, who was his right-hand man, made sure I was fired. And they replaced me with a guy that actually worked for the Raiders. And I remember like 6 months later having cocktails with Greg Papa, who now calls the games for the Niners, who was a longtime voice of the Raiders. He's like, yeah, you had no chance, man. During negotiations, like some of their checkpoints were get rid of this guy. And this is a slippery slope. When you work for these people that have these properties, and that property is so valuable to the company. If I ran Odyssey, who owns this station, the Cowboys are more important to me. And that property of being in business with them, even though we're cutting them millions of dollars, than any radio host I have, which is just a reality of the business. And I give these guys credit for not giving a shit. But like, if Jerry wants these guys gone, they will be gone, you know? And listen, ever since I've been in the podcast world, I can say whatever I want. I might piss some people off individually, but I don't answer to anybody in terms of the teams. Because if I did, and I've done it before, I know that's not a great environment for me. And I think sometimes you see these people, you know, on ESPN or at a radio station, you kind of lose sight of like how the business works, right? Who you need in business. This is where you get your money. So I do kind of agree with Jerry of like, listen, you guys are just giving it to me. Like, you guys need my fucking business. Let's never get this twisted. And this is the hard part about the Cowboys, is like their business is more important to everybody. I don't talk as much about them probably as I should, but definitely local TV, ESPN or whatever, like you need them. And especially in the local market, you need that property because that funnels you the players and the coaches. And obviously Jerry, who again, the radio station, I'm not even sure Jerry forces them to pay. He might just, hey, get a sponsor, give it to charity. But usually any guest you have on is also compensated. So it's like you got to pay to play because you want to pay to play because you need them. When I was in the Bay Area, we didn't have the Giants or the 49ers. Well, guess what? Having the Raiders and the A's, and this is why I thought I was untouchable. Because like the Raiders don't even rate. Who gives a shit? The Niners are more important. And we would pay 49er players, Giants players to be weekly guests, even though we had the other two teams. Because we couldn't sustain business with those two properties. And since I've left, they bought the Golden State Warriors. Because you have to have powerful local teams in sports radio to really make hay. Anyone that watched the documentary on Francesa and Chris Russo, they all admitted like part of our success had to do with we were in business with the New York Football Giants, the New York Knicks, and the New York Rangers. They all happened to be pretty good in the 90s, especially the Rangers and the Knicks. It helped business because who did they get every week? You know, or in the early night, Bill Parcells, Pat Riley, like Mark Messier, you get access to those guys. And like in my business right now, I'm not determined, or my financial success as a podcast entity is not determined by one other property. If it was like, hey, you're in business with the AFC, let's say, and every single week I get any quarterback I want from the AFC and any coach I want, I would probably, it went through the NFL, I probably wouldn't be taking shots at Roger Goodell, right? Because I would be making a lot off what they're giving me. It's just the way business works. And I think sometimes people in media lose sight because they're like, I'm a journalist. It's like, no, you're in, this is all business. Like the reason newspapers went down, all they ever were a distribution of ads. That was the business. And then less and less and less and less people read newspapers, their model got fucked. And it's why the only way they can make money now is to charge you a monthly fee. because they know you don't get it from your driveway anymore. Are like one thing that has hurt local radio, music and talk radio is this. Why would I do you listen to local radio to hear music in your car anymore? Probably not. Especially people my age and younger. They wouldn't know what the local radio station unless they're from that area. If you offer them $100,000, they couldn't even guess. So ultimately, like, listen, Jerry's worked up, but like, he's not totally wrong. I mean, he's wrong in the sense that like he doesn't cut their check to pay them, but like you're in business with the fucking Cowboys, and there's a line of like, hey, you can push someone, but hey, like your fucking station. Part of the reason they're one of the top stations. I think the top sports station in Dallas. It's like being in business with them. That's kind of important. It's that's the whole thing, and that your success. If you don't think your success is tied to that, you're high on some pretty good stuff. The other thing, and again, I'm not even pushing back on what those guys said to Jerry because the Cowboys are in shambles. They got a lot of issues. But like, if I was Jerry, like, I'm just gonna let you guys bend me over. Like that's just how it's gonna work. Especially after I just got my ass kicked. You're gonna call me the fucking village idiot? Like I probably would have said the same thing if I was 80 years old. I might have been even meaner. And last but not least, the morning package. Florio was writing about today. You could see this thing coming from a mile away. I just hope it's bad games because like I can get up on the West Coast for Aaron Rodgers, or if I'm in a plane to watch Caleb Williams, but like Patriots, Jags, like is this gonna be a thing? And the answer is 100% yes. I think the only question now is it going to be 10 games a year? Is it going to be 15 games a year? I don't know, but it's pretty clear where this is headed. Thursday Night Football netted the NFL from Amazon, I think over $800 million a year per year. They just developed it out of nowhere. So if you could sell a separate package on Sunday mornings, it wouldn't go as high as what CBS and Fox and those people are paying for their total packages, which I think all under this one umbrella equals like close to like $10 billion. But what if you get a couple $1,000,000 that Apple pay or Netflix? Hey, we just get 12 games a year, 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time window, all the games in Europe. That's going to happen.